Good evening, and thanks for joining us on this unique occasion for an exchange of ideas between the two candidates running to be the next Lieutenant Governor of Virginia. First, the Republican candidate, Mr. John Reid. Welcome, Mr. Reid. Next, the Democrat candidate, State Senator Ghazala Hashmi. Senator Hashmi, are you there?
Good to be here. Thanks so much.
Okay. First, let's get to opening statements, starting with Senator Hashmi.
I'm running to be Virginia's next lieutenant governor because voters need someone who has the experience, knowledge, and ability to fight for Virginians, especially given the chaos coming out of Washington. I have a track record with regard to the issues that Virginians care about: education, healthcare, housing, and opportunity. I am ready to make policy that will make Virginia an example for other states.
Mr. Reid, your response?
Well, it's too bad that Senator Hashmi won't appear for a real debate. If she's not willing to engage in her own campaign for lieutenant governor, I don't know why anybody thinks that she'd be able to fight for anything in Washington, D.C. And indeed, the things that she has fought for in the state Senate are the things that most Virginians don't like keeping the schools closed for an extra year, like pushing for boys and girls sports, advocating for men in women's private spaces, higher taxes, releasing criminals early. Everything that we would identify as a problem in the state of Virginia, Ghazala Hashmi has pushed. Now, you compare that to me. I'm someone who has worked at the highest levels of the federal government as communications director in the U.S. Senate, as communications director at the United States Chamber of Commerce, working with business people all around the world and in the United States, from the Fortune 500 companies to the smallest mom and pop startups. I know what these businesses need to try to grow their business and increase jobs. And that will be one of my key priorities, not just gaveling in the Senate, not just working on legislation with senators, but advocating for the state of Virginia. And with the chaos that Ghazala Hashmi references in Washington, D.C., and the fact that we're $37 trillion in debt, you need someone like me at the state capitol in Richmond who will try to bring additional jobs to Virginia rather than burden businesses and folks who are trying to grow the economy.
Our first topical question tonight is about the economy. Virginia currently is one of the top 5 states for business, according to CNBC's annual economic report. However, with recent cuts to federal jobs, which have affected millions of Virginians, analysts worry about Virginia's economic stability going forward. What would you do to help bolster Virginia's economy as lieutenant governor? Senator Hashmi?
I want to make sure that Virginia is prepared for the future as the economy, technology, and the workforce evolve. We need to expand access to quality childcare and make it affordable. Government should ensure that families have home health care and elder care. We also need to mandate that workers receive compensation at an acceptable level. I believe that a living wage is a fundamental right for workers and their families. Accordingly, we need to institute living wage here in Virginia.
Mr. Reid, your response?
Well, how can you tell me that you know nothing about the economy and business without actually admitting you know nothing about economics and business? Senator Hashmi just did that. Talking about a living wage sounds good, but it doesn't accomplish anything except the loss of jobs. Mandating that businesses provide child health care, childcare and health care does nothing for the actual workers except cost them their jobs. The solution here is to create non-government programs that enable and empower businesses and the individual employee, not create additional government regulations that make it harder for citizens to work. And I'd point out that I'm the only candidate who every week has unveiled policy positions, including on child health care, providing opportunities, tax credits for people who need them. It's called the Reid Revolution. I hope you'll go online and take a look at the proposals that I've issued. I think you will find them to be reasonable and responsible. They won't break the bank. And most importantly, they will inspire business people to come to Virginia and grow their economies, grow their businesses, and increase jobs rather than mandate programs that will crush job opportunities in the Commonwealth.
One matter specifically that could affect Virginia's competitiveness in the market is what is commonly referred to as right to work. By this policy, workers do not have to join a union or organized labor group for the sake of employment. At present, Virginia is a right to work state. Would you be in favor of repealing right to work, yes or no? Senator Hashmi?
Support all efforts to repeal right to work. States that don't have right to work laws generally offer better working conditions and outcomes for employees. In Virginia, right to work restrictions affect wages, benefits, and overall job quality. Many workers and most of the general public don't understand how labor laws are central to better economic outcomes. As Lieutenant Governor, I will always push for legislative changes for workers' rights.
Mr. Reid?
Senator Hashmi says that the general public doesn't understand labor law. It's clear that she doesn't understand economics. And when she's advocating doing away with the right to work, she is advocating crushing the working class in Virginia. How do I know this? Her own party used to agree. Chuck Robb, Jerry Beliles, Doug Wilder, even Mark Warner and Tim Kaine, all Democrat governors advocated for the right to work, which means that the worker decides whether they join a union or not. It means that the worker decides whether money is taken out of their paycheck and siphoned off to the labor union, which, by the way, then goes to some nefarious political activities that many people wouldn't agree with. I stand with the working people of Virginia. I want the person who goes to work every day to make that decision for themselves. That's important for the working people. It's important for businesses. If we're bringing businesses to Virginia, the reason they're coming is not just that we have a beautiful beachfront and we have the mountains. It's because they can do business here without being dictated to by a labor boss from New Jersey. And Senator Hashmi is advocating changing that law to a point where no one will want to come to Virginia, and we will lose businesses to Tennessee, which, by the way, doesn't have an income tax. So we're giving up the number one reason that businesses come to Virginia, the northernmost state with the right to work. And it is a reckless and irresponsible decision. I suspect that Senator Hashmi actually knows that, and her friends at the labor unions will reward her for this position that she's taking. I will always stand with the working people of Virginia.
Another economic matter is minimum wage. Right now, Virginia employers must pay employees no less than $12.41 per hour. Are you for increasing the minimum wage? Why or why not? And if so, to what? Senator Hashmi?
I support raising the minimum wage to at least $15 and establishing an alignment of wages with inflation and cost of living. I have championed efforts to increase the minimum wage and supported legislation to eliminate minimum wage exemptions. When workers receive a living wage, those dollars go back into the community, supporting small businesses and entrepreneurs.
Mr. Reid?
Well, at least Senator Hashmi recognizes that money that's paid to workers does fuel the economy. But what she would actually be doing by raising the minimum wage to $15, and many in her party are saying $20 or $25 an hour, is kill jobs. Once again, we're dealing with people, Senator Hashmi, with all due respect, who have no clue about how a business works and no understanding of economics. This sounds like a very good idea if you're economically illiterate. Raising the minimum wage would cost low-income workers their positions. The young man who pops the popcorn at the movie theater would lose that job. The popcorn would then be imported to the movie theater. There would be no position for this individual. So this is another really foolish idea that has the potential to crush those who are just beginning in the workforce or trying to move their way up the ladder and try to work to a better wage. And I'm so distressed that Senator Hashmi continues to propose ideas that have been tried in other places that have cost thousands of people their jobs, including in California, where one of the basic jobs, no offense to anyone who works in fast food, now all of those positions in California have been replaced by computer terminals. That may be coming anyway, but there's no reason for us to push for that to happen sooner and faster. Let's give workers an opportunity to start with an entry-level job and continue to grow their way in the business economy of Virginia. Senator Hashmi clearly doesn't understand it. Once again, I will stand up for the working people and the working families of Virginia.
In 2021, the Democrat-led Virginia General Assembly and then Democrat Governor Ralph Northam decreed that Virginia would follow the California-based electric vehicle mandate, whereby all vehicles sold in Virginia must be zero emission by 2035. Republican Governor Glenn Youngkin and Republican Attorney General Jason Miyares canceled this decree last year. If you become Lieutenant Governor of Virginia, would you be in favor of reinstating the EV mandate, yes or no, and why or why not? Senator Hashmi?
Wholeheartedly support an electric vehicle mandate. The effects of human-caused climate change are happening, and Virginia must address the climate catastrophes that face us. Reducing carbon emissions and transitioning to renewable energy sources are imperative for the sake of environmental justice.
Mr. Reid, your response?
Yeah, I don't think anybody even understands what environmental justice is. And I do think Virginians understand government mandates. No one in this state wants the state government dictating what type of vehicle they can drive. No one in this state needs Ghazala Hashmi or a Democrat governor telling them how to live their lives. There's no one in this state who appreciates the environment more than I do. Some folks laugh when I talk about how I'm an Eagle Scout and I've spent more time out camping in Virginia than most people unless they're in the Marine Corps. I appreciate the environment of Virginia, but I've also traveled around the world, and I know that the position that the Democrats in Virginia, that Senator Hashmi would put us in, would not make us more competitive as a state. It would not protect and preserve the environment of Virginia. It would send us into decline economically. And those who are in decline economically cannot keep up with the transition that's necessary to keep our air and water clean and protect the environment of Virginia. These are very poor decisions that Virginians have rejected time and time again when they've been asked. And Senator Hashmi is on the wrong side of dictating to the average person in Virginia what they must do in their own home, in their own life. I'll stand up for your personal freedom.
Our next topic is schooling. Opinions differ on the role that expanded school choice should play in Virginia education. Quite simply, are you in favor of expanding school choice for families, Why or why not? Senator Hashmi.
I am for fully funding Virginia's public schools. Private school vouchers and tax breaks take money away from our public school system. School choice unevenly benefits wealthier families, which can afford the remaining private tuition costs. Meanwhile, less affluent families in public schools are left with fewer resources, thereby increasing educational disparity. I am committed to protecting public education for all Virginia schools.
Mr. Reid, your thoughts?
Well, I'm a public school person. My father was a middle school principal. My mother was a public school teacher. I went to Henrico County Public Schools from kindergarten through 8th grade. I then went to a private school, which was very expensive. I know about these very expensive tuitions. That's why I think it is time for us to tell the truth to each other and admit that there are some wonderful schools in Virginia and there's some schools that just aren't cutting it. And I think it is wrong, Senator Hashmi, to mandate that someone who is in a neighborhood where a school system is failing or an individual school is failing, for them not to be able to remove their child and give them another opportunity with the tax money that has been allocated for that child. Not all of it. We're already doubling the amount of money we're spending on public schools. $21 billion in the latest 2-year budget. That's double what we were spending just 5 years ago. And Senator Hashmi doesn't think that the individual parent should have the opportunity to move their child to a better school. This plan of school choice will provide new opportunities and competition and will hold school systems accountable for good results for their students. Senator Hashmi, once again, is standing up for teachers' unions, not for the students. One thing you can count on from me at the Capitol is I will be looking out for families. I will be looking out for students, not for the teachers' unions.
On a related note, Governor Youngkin has opposed Democrat efforts to incorporate certain controversial texts and books into government grade schools as a matter of course. Democrat leaders have equated Governor Youngkin's stance to censorship. Governor Youngkin counters that he is protecting the ability of parents to consent to what their children read. What is your view regarding this matter? Senator Hashmi?
We oppose attempts to ban books from our schools. We've had superintendents who actually remove books from school libraries, which is why I wrote the bill to stop banning books. As Lieutenant Governor, I will oppose censorship, and I will advocate educational best practices for curricula.
Mr. Reid?
Well, that's absurd. No one is talking about banning books. Everyone in modern America can order any book they want to. Protecting children from controversial topics that are not age appropriate, and protecting young people from being exposed to pornographic material, which is exactly what is happening in some of our public schools. That is not censorship. That is protecting young people. And it is time for us to have leaders at the Capitol who are discerning enough to know the difference. You're not banning books. You are saying that age-appropriate material is what should be in libraries. And anyone who wants to order a book and have it delivered the next day to their home, that's certainly a possibility for them. So I wish we were in a place where we could be honest about what's happening here. This is a play to try to inflame tensions in the classroom, and there is no reason for that. Responsible people used to all agree we protect the innocence of young people as long as possible. And I will add, the teachers need to be focused on the basics of reading and writing and basic history and science and preparing young people to hit the age of 18 and graduate with all of those skills and be good citizens. This distraction about censorship, alleged censorship, when we're talking about actual pornographic material is absurd, and it is counter to everything we should be doing to protect young people and families in Virginia. Once again, I have to stand up for families and let parents make these decisions instead of bureaucrats in the school system.
Follow-up question, broadly. Who should be in charge of children's education in Virginia? Parents or legislators? Senator Hashmi.
I'm concerned about parents who think that they can legislate what their children are reading in school. That's the job of legislators, people like I am, not the job of parents.
Mr. Reid, your response?
Well, I know there are a lot of parents who would disagree with you, and they have made their voice heard time and time again. We used to be able to trust those who led our school system to focus on the basics of reading and writing and science and history and basic civics. But now we have a school system which is infused with political dynamic that is divisive and causes individual students to hate their own society. It's time for us to get back to the basics, and it's time for us to empower parents to make these decisions, not bureaucrats. I have said consistently that I think one flag belongs in our schoolroom. That's the American flag. We don't need the BLM flag. We don't need the gay flag. We don't need the transgender flag. We need to take all of the controversial social justice issues, which people like Senator Hashmi have made a living off of, and get those out of the classrooms and make sure that we prepare students to be wise enough to make their own judgment as they interact with their own parents and their own families, and that the values of those families are the values that are passed down to the next generation, not that they are indoctrinated by school officials who clearly have ideas that don't match up with where most Virginians are.
A debate has raged in Virginia for a number of years now over policies related to the transgender phenomenon among our youth. What are your positions in regard to transgender access in government-run schools to bathrooms, changing rooms, sports, etc., and transgenderism in general? Senator Hashmi.
We need to look out for and protect the rights of our transgender children. They have a right to be addressed with pronouns of their own choosing. Boys identifying as girls have the right to compete on the playing field where they feel that they belong. Trans kids have the right to use the restrooms and changing rooms where they feel most comfortable. Last but not least, trans minors have the right to get the surgeries that they need so as to feel as though they're in the right body. To oppose the trans rights of children is to deny them their personhood, deny them their identity.
Mr. Reid.
Look, I'm the most open-minded person probably who's ever run for statewide office. But I will tell you, when it comes to young people, this is confusion. It is gender dysphoria. These young people deserve counseling that will help them feel comfortable in their own body. And most of you are aware that I'm a historic candidate. I am the first gay person in either party to run statewide and to be on a ticket, Republican or Democrat. And I am telling you, after 30 years of having been around what I consider to be a very damaging, almost insane political agenda, this is not the direction that we should take. Young people deserve to be protected. The fact that Senator Hashmi would stand up and say that she agrees with the idea of mutilating the bodies of perfectly healthy young people instead of helping them work through what many of us used to call teenage angst indicates that she has been completely bought into the most radical ideas in our society. Most parents do not agree with that. Now, once you turn 18, it's not my business what you do. I don't need to be in your bedroom. I don't need to be associated with the decisions that you're going to make, even if they're important. But we have an obligation to protect young people from making dramatic decisions that a reasonable person would conclude they would regret in the next few years. And I will stand up for young people. I'll stand up for parents. And the idea that we're going to keep this secret from parents and not involve them in these types of issues is very troubling to me. It's another thing that I think should be disqualifying for Senator Hashmi and, quite frankly, many people in her party.
In the wake of the Supreme Court's ruling in Dobbs v. Jackson, states have assumed jurisdiction over abortion access. Currently in Virginia, public policy largely permits abortion through the second trimester of a pregnancy. However, the state will not pay for a woman to have an abortion in almost all cases. Would you, as Lieutenant Governor, be in favor of expanding or contracting legal access to abortion in Virginia? Senator Hashmi.
I will never stop fighting for reproductive health care, including access to abortion and contraception. We have to ensure that women have access to the health care that they deserve. This is why I sponsored the Right to Contraception Act to protect women's freedoms.
Mr. Reid.
No one is attempting to restrict your right to contraception. The problem that Senator Hashmi has is she has been supportive of this absolutely outrageous constitutional amendment, which allows day of birth abortion. And I have traveled around the state, unlike my opponent. I have put almost 100,000 miles on my car talking to people who don't necessarily agree with me, unlike my opponent. And I have talked to many people who are pro-choice, who have said, yeah, the idea of murdering a baby on the day that it is to be born is a step too far. So we're not even having the conversation that we've had for 40 years about first and second trimester abortions. Virginians are voting about whether or not they think a child should be killed on the day of birth. And I think that crosses a line even for pro-choice women who believe that this is a civil right. The other thing that is very problematic is that Senator Hashmi and her party have created an amendment which will prevent parents from being engaged in that decision if a minor has to make the decision about an abortion. And, you know, even if you're pro-choice, even if you don't agree with me on the life issue, even if you're a little left of center, I think most parents would want to have some consultation and judgment before their minor daughter makes that decision. And I'm going to stand up for parents again and for young people so that responsible decisions are made. And this amendment is the most extreme law, certainly in the United States and perhaps in the world. And the Democrats know exactly what they're doing. And this is reckless and irresponsible, and it needs to stop.
Gun violence continues to make headlines throughout our country. The violence has even turned partisan of late, with multiple assassination attempts against President Trump and the killing of activist Charlie Kirk in just the last year. How would you help combat gun and political violence in Virginia if you become her next lieutenant governor? Senator Hashmi.
Tragically, mass shootings continue to increase, and gun violence is now the #1 killer of our children, more than accident or illness. I am committed to doing everything I can to stop the proliferation of guns and reduce the violence and number of deaths. I strongly support universal background checks, strengthened red flag laws, and banning assault weapons, which are weapons of war.
Mr. Reid.
Well, Senator Hashmi, with all due respect, the problem is not the law-abiding gun owners in this state. The problem is that there are Democrats like you who are in prosecutorial roles who refuse to actually prosecute violent crime. So individuals who commit a crime, who demonstrate that they are violent, are released. I don't like to assign bad motives to people, but perhaps you think you're helping these individuals, but what you're doing is not giving them a second chance in their life. You're giving them a second chance to victimize additional people. In city after city after city, we see these results, and the results are terrible. It is time for us to punish individuals who commit crime, to punish them harshly, and to make sure that the message goes out to young people and to adults alike that we're not going to tolerate criminality. We're not going to tolerate violence. We're not going to tolerate murder in our society. This is not a gun problem. It is a people problem. And there is a way to deal with it. We have proven over and over and over again that by being tough on those who commit crime, we will watch the crime rates go down. We should also make an effort, and I would encourage you to go to the Reid Revolution on Substack and look at the plans that I propose to deal with mental health care. Mental health care is a problem. We should spend some time thinking about why we have created a society that seems to create many, many troubled individuals. The strength of the family probably needs to be evaluated in every policy we're creating on the state level and the federal level. Are we putting together policies and proposing policies that strengthen the family, where there is someone who can monitor children, who can work with children and mentor them, identify problems before they turn into major problems where you have criminality or violence or anything else that would be harmful to another citizen? I think I have the right approach. I think Senator Hashmi and her friends in the Democrat Party have consistently won their argument and pushed things through the legislature, which have put us in a much more dangerous situation in Virginia. It's time for that to stop.
On the subject of political violence, I would be remiss if I didn't address the unearthed text messages that Senator Hashmi's ticket mate, Jay Jones, wrote about former Virginia House of Delegates Speaker Todd Gilbert and his family. Jones insinuated that Speaker Gilbert was worse than Adolf Hitler and deserved to die. Further, Jones indicated that he wished death upon Gilbert's children, whom Jones referred to as quote-unquote little fascists. Jones wrote, and I quote, "Only when people feel pain personally do they move on policy." Senator Hashmi, what do you have to say about your ticket mate's remarks?
Jay will need to take accountability for the pain that his words have caused.
Should Jay Jones drop out of the Attorney General's race, Senator Hashmi? I guess that's Senator Hashmi's answer. Mr. Reid, is Jay Jones unfit for office?
Yes, Jay Jones is unfit for office. That has now been on display for everyone to see. And this is another moment where Ghazala Hashmi and her Democrat friends have refused to take the steps that a responsible person would take to say it's time for Jay to step aside. This is not just a collection of words that are offensive. These are actual threats of political violence. We've seen assassination attempts. We have seen Charlie Kirk's assassination. We have seen members of our own House of Delegates, Republican members of the House of Delegates, threatened with death. I had that happen to me while I was having a press conference, live on the internet, a death threat against me. Now there is a consistent decision that I have to make about whether I wear a bulletproof vest in public. In Virginia, this is outrageous. The Democrat Party of Virginia, the Democrat Party across the United States has a violence problem. And I will say, with all due respect, Senator Hashmi, you should have been one of the leaders to say that Jay Jones should step down, and you should be calling upon the people in your party to be peaceful. We're never going to agree on everything. I accept that, but we should not tolerate political violence with a wink and a nod and say that it doesn't matter when someone is revealed to have said something as horrible as what Jay Jones said. It's a reckless position that you're taking. To me, it's a disqualifier, not just for him, but for you as lieutenant governor. And I would say the same thing about anyone who's running for office. If you can't denounce this, then you have no moral compass at all. And Virginians should reject you to be in a position of leadership.
In recent months, with President Donald Trump's return to the White House, we've seen a crackdown on undocumented immigration. Here in Virginia, Governor Youngkin has offered his cooperation with Immigration and Customs Enforcement, aka ICE, as it attempts to deport undocumented immigrants from the country. If you become Lieutenant Governor, would you favor or oppose continued cooperation with ICE? Senator Hashmi.
That Governor Youngkin's decision to help ICE was absolutely reprehensible. Our sheriffs and local law enforcement shouldn't be assisting with the policing of international immigration. No, our sheriffs and local law enforcement should be protecting our citizens on issues of public safety.
Mr. Reid.
Well, that's what our sheriffs and our law enforcement are doing, is protecting citizens with public safety issues, because some of the people, not everyone who comes here illegally, find themselves committing crimes. And if they have committed a crime, it is incumbent upon our law enforcement and our courts to assist in enforcing the law. Let me be clear, since no one else in the state of Virginia seems to be capable of saying it. We all have to obey the law. And that means you do, Senator Hashmi, I do. The people who are working in a factory have to obey the law. The people who run businesses have to obey the law. This is a key discussion point that I think we need to get through as a people. You must obey the law. And these are not new laws. These laws have been on the books for a long time, and we are now dealing with the consequences of not actually enforcing the law fairly. So you have millions of people who would like to come to the United States, who are going through the process correctly, who are paying attorneys, who are waiting in line to become workers in America and hopefully American citizens. And then you have people who have jumped the line. And then you have people who are criminals from other countries who are here. It's time for us to clean up this situation and to be very strict about who is in the country. That, again, is not bigotry. That's called being responsible. That's called being a responsible leader. And I think Governor Youngkin has been absolutely correct in mandating that law enforcement actually enforce the law, and all of us will be in a better position, even those who are here as immigrants, if we actually enforce the law and get rid of the people who are committing crimes. It's very easy. It is not complicated, and it's offensive that Senator Hashmi continues to try to equate immigrants who came here legally with those who came here illegally.
A final topical question. Obviously, both of you want to be Virginia's next lieutenant governor. What is your impression of Virginia and the electorate here? Senator Hashmi.
I do suspect that most voters in Virginia, people who voted for Glenn Youngkin, are racist. Racism is so latent and so much a part of the society in Virginia. Accordingly, Virginians are susceptible to racist dog whistles, the likes of which we heard from the Youngkin campaign 4 years ago, for instance.
Wow. Mr. Reid?
Well, that's an outrageous and offensive comment to make. And anyone who looks at the people of Virginia and has that attitude about them should not be a leader of the people of Virginia. And I think it is time for someone to say something important about this issue, and I guess I'll be the one to do it. Simply disagreeing on important issues does not make one a racist. And I, for one, am tired of leaders like Senator Hashmi constantly equating a disagreement into a racist motive for individuals like me. It is time for us to unite as a people, unite around good jobs and economic prosperity for all of our citizens. And it's very unfortunate that Senator Hashmi has actually articulated something that insults most of the voters of Virginia. Glenn Youngkin is a good person. Glenn Youngkin has done a good job as governor. I think he has attempted to treat people fairly. And it's outrageous that Senator Hashmi has articulated a position like that.
Okay, time now for closing statements. Senator Hashmi.
Really, I haven't much more to say. Based on the policy positions that I've advocated here, as well as my experience serving in the Virginia Senate, I believe that I am the best person to help lead the Commonwealth of Virginia as we move forward.
Mr. Reid.
Well, let me say it's pretty shocking that this artificial intelligence debate is the opportunity for most Virginians to hear anything about the woman who is seeking to be lieutenant governor on the Democrat ticket. That is shameful. It should be disqualifying. Senator Hashmi and her attempts to hide from the media and from the public and from her Republican opponent and actually daring to say that I'm not a legitimate candidate is extremely offensive. I'm glad we had the opportunity to expose the irrational positions that Senator Hashmi has espoused, and I'm glad that I get to share my experience as a person with a degree in political science, as someone who's worked for a former president of the United States, as someone who has run communications at the highest levels of government at the United States Senate, who has worked with businesses all across the country and around the world with the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, who has lived in other nations. I've been to 113 countries around the world. I'm probably the most open-minded and well-traveled person who's ever run for office in Virginia. And I think that that will bring me experience as a broadcaster, as an international businessman, as a compassionate individual who has a very unique story to tell in the role of lieutenant governor. And I will end with what I share as I travel across the state. We're not going to agree on everything. It's completely okay. Unlike most politicians, I'm not here to make you bow down to me. I'm not here to make you obey the positions that I take. I'm here to offer solutions economically and culturally that I think will put us in a better position as we compete with other states. And I will look at every issue that comes before the state Senate if I'm entrusted with the role of lieutenant governor, if I have to break tie votes about whether it expands the freedom of our individual citizens and whether it makes us more competitive in a very competitive business climate in the United States for Virginia to be successful. I will be reasonable. I will be responsible. I will be respectful of people, even if I disagree with them and they disagree with me. And most importantly, I will endeavor to make every decision by being fair to everyone in the Commonwealth of Virginia. And that's why I'm asking for your vote to be the next lieutenant governor. And I appreciate the opportunity to be here tonight.
This concludes tonight's virtual debate. I'd like to thank the candidates for being here. Mr. Reid?
Well, I'm glad to be here, and I appreciate the opportunity.
Senator Hashmi?
You bet. Bye-bye.
Remember, the polls are open and will be through Tuesday, November 4th. Get out there and vote, everybody. Thanks for watching, and good night.